Happy Labor Day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Business is Blumin podcast. We've got an awesome, incredible show planned today. We've got Rich, the Credit King, on. Rich, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you for having me here.
Sure, man. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate this Labor Day special edition episode.
Yes.
A ton of background to get into. You're up to some really cool stuff. But just to get started, can you talk about a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and kind of your upbringing?
Yes, yeah. So I'm from Louisiana, born and raised pretty much. We just moved to out here to Dallas area about 7, 8 months ago. Liking this area way more than Louisiana. Louisiana seems like it's more of a retirement state. It's really, really slow. But I actually got into credit and financing and things like that in about 2015. I was in the oil field trying to start my first company, and I ended up getting let go. I say some people say laid off. I say let go, but I ended up getting let go. And at that time, I had a brand new Explorer. I had a brand new car. I had all these credit cards and stuff like that. And I went from making like $6,000 to $8,000 a month guaranteed to like nothing. My wife was in school, so she couldn't help with the bills, and ended up getting laid off at that time. So my credit got horrible. It was decent at first, but then my credit got bad. And from there is when I really started learning more about credit and how to build it and how to grow it and things like that. So everything for me pretty much started off in like 2015.
Mhm. Got it. Awesome. No, it's really
Yeah,
cool to hear. Definitely get into a bit more of your story, but it
yeah,
goes to show that even if you have a bad credit history, there's always a path back. You just got to figure it out. But
correct,
it's really great to hear. So one of the
correct.
things you just mentioned was that you wanted to finance after kind of the oil field thing didn't really work out. Would love to know why you chose finance in particular as opposed to a bunch of other different industries that are out there.
Yes. So when I ended up getting laid off from the oil field, I was in the process of starting my first company. It was a real
Mhm.
estate business. And when I got laid off, my credit got horrible. So at that time, I didn't know any other way to get into real estate besides buying and being a realtor. So I ended up getting my realtor's license, but I also learned how to invest in real estate as well. But I couldn't invest because I didn't have any cash. I didn't have any credit because I got laid off.
Mhm.
So at that time when I really started learning about credit and finances and things like that, I started realizing that everybody else has the same issue. A lot of other people have the same issues. People get caught into collections in on their credit, and then the collection gets sold to another company, which now they don't even owe it, but they're still forced to pay it. Things like that, and the company will take a tax write off, and it'll say written off on your credit report, but they still will try to come after you for money when they've already been paid. So I'm like, wow, people are really getting taken advantage of, and I just want to help more people to get out of the situation that I was in as well. So
Isn't
from there, that's when I really started doing it. My credit was horrible and I needed to fix it. So I had to learn how to do it in the first place.
Isn't on that note, it seems kind of scummy that like say on an income statement, if there's like a bank or a lender,
Hmm.
obviously not every loan works out. That's just how business works. But it
Correct.
seems a little scummy to the sense that they'll write off the loan as like a provision for credit loss, but they'll still try to come after that collateral. Like,
Yes,
who are you?
100%. 100%. And it's crazy because they get away with it. All the time they get away with it. And you can actually see on your credit report it's written off. It's a tax write off, meaning they already got paid from the government. They're writing it off on their taxes. But they're supposed to send you a 1099 saying that they pretty much gave you the money, but they don't do that. They just come after you and say, hey, even though we got paid, let's try to get paid again. And most of the time, people will pay it.
It's crazy. I have this belief that like in order to do great business, in order to be sustainable, you have to do business with good faith, be ethical.
Right.
Because no pun intended, but being unsustainable in business or being unethical, like that's unsustainable. Like one way or another, someone's gonna like catch you red-handed. So I
Correct.
don't know if we'll keep getting away with it, but hopefully people are a little more ethical moving forward. But
Yes.
that conversation for another day. But no, really, really cool to get into that. So it sounds like you had a lot of these personal finance issues. Then when you started learning about it, you became really interested in it, and then also you were like, oh, other people might have these issues, so this may be something I could help other people out with. Does that sound right?
Correct. Correct. 100%.
Awesome, cool. And on that note, you said you wanted to get into it. I know because you're interested, but also because you wanted to help people out.
Mm.
Obviously, I'm sure you have a lot of business going on and a lot of clients. So, from your perspective, how would you say that you're able to build trust with clients for kind of successful business relationships moving forward?
So one of the big things for me is that once people are finished with their credit, they're looking to do something with it. And a
Mhm.
lot of times for most people, we don't have any passive income set up. We don't have any, relationships. We know what we want to do, but we don't know the steps in order to get there. So what I've been fortunate enough to build is kind of like a one-stop shop. So when people come to me, I can assess their profile and they can tell me what they're looking to do, and from there, I might have resources and relationships that I can connect them with, because your network is your net worth, pretty much. And a lot of times, people don't have that network, and they don't have the next step in the process. They just have a dream and a goal and an idea, but they don't have a way to get there. So I can, from the beginning, look at their report. If they're looking to get funding or something like that, I know exactly how to structure it, and I'll help them to do all of that stuff, all of the things they need to do, and then get them to the right relationship. So it's like a one-stop shop. People will do business with me one time, but I have 10 other things for us to do together that takes them from a different life change in every part of the process.
Got it. Okay, so it sounds like one stop shop for a lot of your clients, but like you personally, your business, you have from the client perspective, have business coming from that end, but are also able to build relationships with other individuals, maybe other lenders, and
Hmm.
once you know someone, you can kind of eloquate or be able to tell their story in a better way, and then ultimately
Correct.
help you make money that way. Okay.
Correct. Correct.
Awesome. Kind of another hot topic to get into, which I'm sure you're probably aware of and hear about each and every day, interest rates. It seems to be on the
Mhm.
top of the news every day. So
Yeah,
right now, I think the federal fund rate is what, between 5 and 5.25, or is it?
I believe
Or is
so. I think it might be up to 5.5.
I think yeah, between 5.25 and 5.5. My bad on
Mhm.
that. I was relatively in the ballpark. Forgot
Yeah,
the
yeah.
point basis raise, but
Mhm.
obviously it definitely has a significant impact on borrowing from banks, private credit's doing right now. From your perspective, how do you think the rise in interest rates has affected people really trying to get loans out there or really trying to get credit?
So it's tough because what I specialize in is I help people to get business credit cards and lines of credit. Now, the business credit cards will be 0% interest for like 6 to 18 months. So it's no issue there. But with the lines of credit, you can get a lot more money. But the lines of credit interest rates are increasing. So
Yep.
where I used to, let's say I have a $50,000 line of credit that's completely maxed out, I might have paid $300 before per month on just interest. Today, I might be paying 550.
Mhm.
So it's not that big of a deal, but it's a lot of money. The good thing about lines of credit is that you pay interest only payments until your term is over. So if it's a 2-year line of credit, you pay interest only every month. So I'll
Mhm.
pay, let's say, $500 a month, and at the end of my term, I have to pay back that full amount. But
So that-
it's manageable because it's so cheap because it's only interest. But at the same time, interest rates are going up, so it does make it a little tougher. It's still kind of easy to get approved for them, but it's getting a little tough to manage them unless you know how to make money with that, with the capital that you get. As long as you get, let's say I give you $50,000, as long as you can make $1,000 a month with it, you'll be fine.
Got it. Sounds good. So it's it sounds like the line of credit's like a two-edged sword. It helps. Obviously it's probably similar to high yield debt from my perspective. So not to get too into the tangent, but I mentioned on another show in another lifetime, I actually wanted to work in investment banking. So I have a pretty good background of all this stuff. But
Yeah.
high yield debt is when kind of you're paying off the interest over time, and then it's just full at maturity. So the principal is due at the end. So it
Hmm.
sounds like you just have to be able to use that capital correctly, be able to pay off, make those payments every month. But it could be scary, with higher rates and also the principal being due at the end. So it's almost
Hmm.
like you can use it well if it's a well balanced attack. So it's a
Right.
really really interesting talking point around that. And another thing regarding credit, I see, obviously taking a loan from a bank right now because the bank's rates are going to be heavily influenced by the federal funds rates.
Yes.
Private credit is a really booming industry right now, where you
Mhm.
might have people who can't get funding from banks go to private credit with higher interest rates, or they might go to private credit for lower interest rates, but lender terms might be a little more fierce in the sense that there might be a lot more collateral, like kind of collateral needed in order to get a loan at a lower rate. So, kind of if
Mhm.
you were advising someone whether to go get a loan from a bank or go the private credit route, what things would you think that they should consider?
Um, I really would say it's based off of what they have to bring to the table. A lot of
Mhm.
times you only need one of four things to get funding. You either need good personal credit, you need to have business credit, you need to have cash flow or collateral. It's one of
Mhm.
those four. So if you have the cash flow, but you don't have the credit or the collateral, you can still get some financing. And then I would recommend maybe going to a bank and seeing if they can help. But a lot of times the credit unions are going to be easier to go with. Now, if you have good credit and you don't really have the cash flow, I would consider credit cards, business credit cards. You can still get a lot of money with them. You can get 0% interest, and it's gonna be stated income. So let's say you're just getting started and you don't have all of your paperwork together. They won't even ask for it. Even on lines of credit, they won't ask for all of that paperwork because they just don't need it under a certain threshold. So I think it really depends on their end goal and what they can bring to the table. If they have the credit, if they have the cash flow, if they have the collateral, or if they don't.
Got it. So depending on what they have there, that may influence whether they go through a bank or private credit, and then which are most
Correct.
common.
Correct.
Okay. Awesome. Sounds good. Appreciate the point and the explanation around that. Really quickly, for those that don't know, can you explain the difference between a personal credit score and a business credit score?
Perfect. So let's say your personal credit score is attached to you as a person who has a social security number. Your
Mhm.
credit is attached to that social. So, whether if you go and get credit cards on the personal side, it'll show up on your personal credit because it's attached to you as a person and it's attached to your social security number. Now, your business has an EIN number, which is like your business's social security number. You can have credit attached to just the business and not have it attached to you as a person. So that's why a lot of people, once they start making a lot of money, they're like, hey, I don't want to have anything attached to my person. I just want to have everything on the business side. That's where you hear that saying where they say, control everything but own nothing. They own the business, control the business, and the business owns all of the debt. So you can build a profile specifically for the business that's not attached to you as a person.
Got it. So it sounds like if you're ideally also going the LLC route to have limited liability, just if
Mm,
you want to take a personal loan in the future to buy a house or do whatever you need with money these days, it sounds like you
yeah.
should do everything possible to have like those two credits separated. If God
Yes.
forbid something fails with the business, like it doesn't come back to you and the bank's like, oh, like we don't want to loan this guy money. Got it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Is it ever possible, like on that note, for say for a bank to, associate a business with an individual, and even though, like, say if there's not such a great business credit score, but there's a great
Mm.
personal credit score, can they be like, oh, he has a good personal credit score, but his business isn't doing so well? Could that influence how they might fuel their personal loan decisions?
Um, yeah, 100%, 100%. You can get funding for your business just based off the personal credit. When
Mhm.
I first started getting funding, I was still working on building my personal profile up, and I only had one bureau that was clean. It was only just Equifax. And at that time, I was like, look, I want to go and get funding because I want to start growing these businesses, but my credit's still bad. But I was able to find banks because most people don't understand that banks a lot of times only pull one bureau. So I went with my Equifax, and I was still able to get almost $100,000 in funding with just using my Equifax. So you know, um, if you just have personal credit, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to have business credit to get funding. It does help, but you don't have to have it.
Got it. Okay, sounds good. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to navigate, and ideally, if for whatever reason someone doesn't have great credit, try to go with like the credit bureau that has the highest score, and kind of advertise that with the bank in order to access funding. Okay,
Exactly,
awesome.
exactly. And you can really
Appreciate it.
multiply the amount of funding you get because, like I said, most banks only pull one bureau. So I can
Mhm.
go to a bank that pulls Equifax and still have my TransUnion and my experience still intact. And then the business accounts that you get, like business credit cards, lines of credit, it will not show up on your personal profile. It only shows up on the business side. And most credit
Got it.
cards don't even show up. So, you might go and pull your credit, get the hard inquiry, and you get approved for the account, but it still will not show up on the personal side.
Okay, got it. Whenever, say for example, if you're going to a bank and you pull up your credit score and you're able to get a loan with whatever that score is, if you go to another bank, are they going to see that you also have that debt, or like is that something you have to disclose, or it's not something you're trying to hide, but is that something you have to show them without them asking? If you know what I'm saying?
Correct, correct. Some banks will ask you because they want to know who you're doing business with and they want all of your business. They're kind of jealous. But for the most part, they will not be able to see that, unless it's showing up on your business credit profile and they pull your business report. Because a lot of times, most lenders will not pull that. So they'll only look at your personal side. And so it's perfectly possible to where you go and get, let's say, $100,000 on Equifax, and then you go to a place like Chase, and Chase will pull your Experian profile, and they will not see that you just got $100,000 with a different bank.
Got it. Interesting. So it's one of those things that you can. it's not being shady, but it's kind of like doing business the way you got to do business. It's like you're trying to get the most funding, and it's like you're not really
Mhm.
showing what else you got unless they ask. So
Correct,
that's kind of
correct,
just the business. You kind of just got to do what you got to do. You're not hiding anything, but you're not actually showing it if you don't have to.
correct,
So
correct. And
that's
this is
just
what the rich people been doing for a long time. This stuff is kind of new to a lot of people, but these multimillionaires and billionaires, they've been doing this for a long time. They'll go and get $1 million on one bureau and a million on another and a million on another. And now they have $3 million where most people only know, hey, I'll go to my bank and get a credit card. And that's all they think they can get. But most people, people with a lot of money who's been doing this for a long time, they know how to leverage it. They're maximizing their personal credit profile as well as the business credit too.
it's an interesting thing. I mean, hopefully more people can get becoming in the future, and
Hmm.
explore any path just besides credit cards. But it's a really interesting idea. If you have a lot of this leverage, you can kind of, or if you have leverage. When I say leverage, by that, I just mean debt. It's just like a fancier word that finance
Yeah, yeah,
people
yeah,
use. I'm sure you've heard
definitely.
before, but it's incredible how you can take leverage, make a lot of capital out of it, and still have some debt, but then go to another bank. That bank is going to be like, oh, he's going to make more money. Let's lend him money so you can give us more money. So power
Correct.
of leverage is incredible, and just how you're able to kind of gain money. So hopefully more people have access to that in the future. But appreciate the insight around that.
Yeah, no
Another
problem.
Another thing to get a little more into the credit side, obviously you said in the past, unfortunately, you had bad credit, but thankfully we're able to kind of build it up through your business and also helping other people, which is also a great cause. But
Mhm.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of folks, that start out with bad credit. So from your perspective, we'd love to know why you think so many people have bad credit or get into bad credit.
Oh, so one of the things I think is because um, financial illiteracy. People just don't know how to manage credit cards, and they don't know how to, once they get a credit card, they don't know how much to use on it. It's just so many things were not taught to us in the previous generation, so they don't know. They can't pass it down because they don't know it. So now today, people are scared to get credit cards. They're scared to get loans and stuff like that because they just don't know how to properly manage them. And it's really simple things. It's simple tricks and techniques. Like me personally, I have a lot of credit cards. So what I'll do is I'll put them all on an Excel spreadsheet. So I know, this bank, this credit card has this limit on it. It's due on this date. This is how many points it has. This is how much I have left over. So it's all in one place. And then I also will call and get them to change my due dates. So instead of me having, let's say, 10 credit cards and 10 different due dates, I have two due dates on my cards. So I'll say five cards. I call them up and I'll say, hey, I want these cards to be due on the 10th. And then the other five, I'll say, hey, I want these cards due on the 24th. So now, only 2 days out of the month, I know, hey, these times are coming up. I need to pay my credit cards. Instead of scrambling and running around and saying, hey, man, oh, I don't know if my credit's due this day. I don't know when it's due, and it just makes it like a headache. But just simple strategies and techniques and tactics can help you to really properly manage it. And then, you'll stay in good position with your credit.
Uh,
But I think that's all it is.
what's that?
I think that's all it is. It's just people just don't know, and they can't teach us. They can't teach what you don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I love that strategy. So I personally have two credit cards. I actually do the same thing. They're both due around
Mhm.
like the 4th of every month. So a lot of people who might have multiple credit cards might have a different one due every week. And surface level 4 dates seem like it's easy to remember, but with life
Mhm.
happening, I'm sure anything can happen
Exactly.
in life.
Exactly.
Stuff you forget. So I think it's simple strategies like that. I think is really insightful. Just making sure a lot of your credit card. Well, hopefully people don't have a zillion credit cards, but like
Yeah.
people multiple credit cards, having them due during the same time, so like, okay, this time of the month, I've really got to get my stuff together. This is when I really have to kind of pay off these bills. So, it's insightful how just like the simple strategies to would be complex solutions are really the way to go. So,
Correct.
I really appreciate that. Regarding just credit scores and helping people kind of fix their credit. Other than simple strategy like that, is there anything else that you recommend for people kind of in bad credit to help them fix their scores?
So a lot of times what I see is people have a lot of inquiries. And a lot of times it's from trying to get a car. So
Mhm.
what I would recommend a lot of times is that instead of going to the car dealership to get finance for a vehicle, use the bank that you're already currently banking with. Being that you already have that relationship with them, they will be more lenient with you to get you approved for a vehicle. And now when they pull your credit, you only have one pull. And you go to the dealership, you're already approved. Now, when you go to the dealership, they might still say, "Hey, we want to pull your credit anyway," but Just tell them no, I'm already pre-approved for my vehicle. You only get one inquiry and you get approved, versus going to the car dealership and you get 15 or 20 inquiries. I had this client, they came to us, we completely cleaned all of their inquiries off in a couple of accounts within like 2 weeks to 30 days. And when we re-pulled their report in after the 30 days, they had 51 brand new inquiries, which killed their credit. But they went to try to get two, they went to two places to try to get a vehicle, and they got 51 inquiries in total. So all of those inquiries completely kills your credit. And that's one thing that can keep your credit scores up, is by not having so many inquiries. And then also your credit cards. If you do have credit cards on the personal side, I would really stay between 0 and 10% on your due date. Now, I can go into the strategy, but it is kind of complicated to. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So there's a such thing as a due date and a statement date on your credit cards. So your due date, let's say hypothetically, is the 20th. Your statement date will be the 23rd. On your due date is when you should have your credit cards paid down, and the statement date is when it's going to show up on your credit report. So let's say you have a $10,000 credit card. If you use it 100% and you have $10,000 used on it, you're now at 100% utilization. But if you pay it down before your due date and your statement date, and you have, like, let's say $100 left on it or $1,000 left on it, now you have 10% utilization once your credit reports. So even though you've used it all, when you pay it down, it still will not count negatively against you because your utilization is now 10%. Does that make sense?
It's interesting. So actually, I loosely know what you're talking about, but not definitely not to the extent that you do. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
one of the aspects of kind of a credit score is like your utilization, correct? Like of the
Mhm.
credit. So
Correct.
is it the idea to like on your statement date or kind of before the due date? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing or mishearing, but the idea is to have like as low of a utilization spot. Well, maybe not super low, but like a relatively low utilization, just so
Mhm.
it's like you have $10,000, but you're only using two or three, and like that kind of builds up your credit profile over time. Does that sound right?
Correct, correct. That's right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So ultimately, say if someone's like due date is from a month, so from my perspective at least, and correct me if I'm wrong in this. So someone will, let's just use September for example. Say like August 4th to September 4th is just like the your current payment cycle, and say
Mhm.
like the bill is due for that period on October 1st. The idea is to like pay it off as soon as like that closes, just so when it goes on your statement, you'll have like a low utilization, and it'll show you don't have a consistent revolving credit, or not revolving credit, but you won't have a consistent credit balance. Kind of the closer you get to when it's due. Does that sound right, loosely?
Correct, correct. Yeah. So if your payments due on the first, you want to have it. I would pay it a couple of days ahead of time, so that way it has enough time to process. And then whenever your statement date comes out, let's say the statement it states
Mhm.
on the fourth, you have your low utilization at that point. It's going to show up that you've used the max amount, but right now your limit is, or your balance is, 10%. So even though you've used it all, banks and lenders can see that you've used it all, you've paid it back responsibly, and now you have a very low utilization. Now, if you use, let's say you have a $10,000 credit card and you use it completely, on your credit report is going to show that you've used that full amount, because the lender that you use it with, let's say Chase, they can see that you've used 100% of that card. But when it states on your credit report, that's the only date we really need to worry about, your statement date. So when it states on your credit report that you only have $1,000 as your balance, now they see that you've used 10,000, but you've paid it down. So they're more. It seems like you're very, very responsible. And then on your credit report, it only shows that your balance is very low. So your 10% utilization rate makes your score can kind of increase.
Got
Between
it.
2% and 10%, your scores can get an increase, but anything over 10, your scores can go down every month.
Interesting. So it sounds like pay off your stuff as quick as you can. My explanation earlier definitely wasn't as eloquent as yours, so I appreciate you saying that in much more
It's no
concise.
problem.
But to pay it down as soon as you can, just to show that you're not a big credit risk, basically. Okay.
Yes, yeah, and it really depends on your strategy. So let's say, for me, if I go and get people personal credit cards, and let's say we get $100,000, once you get those personal accounts, and you have to wait like 6 months to a year before you can go and get business credit cards, because you have those brand new accounts on your credit, your score is going to go down. You have brand new inquiries. It's best if you wait and you have some payment history before you try to go in business funding, business credit cards, or lines of credit after that. So in that meantime, you still have a lot of this money, this credit that you need to utilize. And put to work for it and leverage it. So in the meantime, I would still recommend you using that money, using those credit cards for an investment. As long as you know that you can make the money back, I would use it for that. But if you can't, I would just leave it sitting out on the side. But the reason why I say that is because when you're using those credit cards and you over that 10%, over that 30%, your scores will go down. But once you pay the cards back down, your scores will go back up. So, you know, I'm just big on investing and getting passive income. So if you can use it and you know how to leverage it and get funding, get money, get revenue from it, then I would use it. But if you don't, then I just wouldn't use it. I wouldn't use it for any liabilities.
Okay, got it. So it depends on kind of what you use it for. So if you're just using it, say, like to pay off your grocery bills, gas bills, pay it down as fast as you can. But if using
Correct.
that money to try to invest it, maybe try to get not too close, but as close you can to that due date before actually having to pay that money, so you can put your money to work.
Correct, correct. And if you don't need to use your credit right now, you can manage it, then it's okay if you just let it go over. Your statement day is not going to matter as much because you're not really using your credit anyway.
Mhm.
So that way it's not a big burden on people. If you have a $10,000 credit card and you max it out, um, and you carry a balance over, your scores will go down. But when you're ready to use your credit again, all you have to do is pay your cards down, and your scores will go back up.
Got it. Interesting. Appreciate the context there. On that
Yeah,
note,
yeah, yeah.
misconceptions people have about credit cards or credit in general that you think could really be.
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, sure, no worries. Are there any common misconceptions about credit or credit cards that people often have?
Let's see, misconceptions. A lot of times people think credit cards are very hard to get. Well, they're really not that hard to get. There's a strategy to it though. So if you want to get like the maximum amount of credit cards, there is a certain strategy. Like for instance, Chase has what's called a 524 rule. So if you have 5 accounts open on the personal side in the last 24 months, Chase will not approve you for a credit card. Versus but Chase is also very inquiry sensitive. So if you have no inquiries on your credit and you're looking for a credit card, I would go with Chase first instead of going somewhere else like Wells Fargo, U.S. Bank. Because if you go to those first, then when you go back to Chase, they might not approve you because now you have new inquiries. And on the other hand, American Express, they don't care about inquiries at all. I've seen people with 21 inquiries get approved for American Express and see people with 3 inquiries get denied for Chase. So, just learning those little tips, those little tactics, and also the common misconception would be that it's very hard to manage too. People think that they're going to get them and just automatically ruin their credit. But like I mentioned earlier with the Excel spreadsheet, there are little things that you can do in order to mitigate your risk and not have to, ruin your personal credit.
That's a fair point. It's always interesting to hear about those little insightful tips that can always help your credit score boost it and keep it up. So I appreciate that.
Correct,
Another
correct.
thing that probably you'd find interesting as well. So I know credit is usually more focused on the individual or small business side, but as businesses grow or as they scale, they might consider additional debt funding or credit funding or kind of pursuing the equity route. Is there any advice that you have for people that are trying to decide whether to go like the debt investing or the equity investing route?
Um, I would say it really depends on your overall goal. A lot of times, people use these words a little differently, but for me, debt investing would be having like the credit cards and the lines of credit, and you getting into that debt, and then you invest that to get some income. Versus private investing, where sometimes where people will say that that means that you have like an angel investor or someone who actually owns a percentage of your company in
Mhm.
order to for you to get capital from them. Now I look at that two different ways. One way is that if you go and get the credit cards and the lines of credit and loans, you are 100% still in ownership of your business, and you can utilize that capital however you want to use it. And you still have your full ownership, which is perfect. But if you go the angel investor route or the private equity route, or where you let someone else have ownership, then it's good and bad because one, you're losing the ownership, which is it's not really that important, but for some people it is. But the good thing about it is that you're getting that other person's expertise, like Shark Tank, for instance. I would much rather give up 15% of my business to someone who's a billionaire to help me to grow that business than keep 100% and make $100,000. So it really depends on what you're looking to do in the long run and how you feel about ownership. Because really, ownership on paper is just numbers. Really, someone who has 1% ownership can make more money on the business as someone who has 99% ownership. It just all depends on the paperwork and operating agreement.
Got it. I think it's actually a great way to look at it. I forgot which shark said something exactly, but one time I heard this quote on Shark Tank. One of the sharks said, it's better to have 15 or 20% of like something giant than 100% of nothing. So
Correct, correct.
in the sense that it's good to, obviously whatever someone prioritizes more, whether it's business ownership or whether it's, having a partner. But I
Mm,
agree that it is something probably a lot of folks have to consider over time. And I really like your point that you said, ownership is really just numbers. I mean, what's like the big difference between 90% and 100%? It's just kind of it's I don't want to say it's fake, but it's obviously you own less, so maybe you might make less off the surface than opposed if you own 100. But it's
mm,
almost trade-off. You have to think about what you're giving up for that 10%. If it's someone that's going to 10x or like 20x your company, then like everyone
mm.
would. So I really like that perspective and thinking that ownership is just a number. If you think about the growth of the business overall, then everything should be fine.
Correct, correct. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way of looking at it too. The other thing, so another part to get into. I know you're kind of the credit king, as I labeled earlier. I won't say that too many times, but you also do some stuff in real estate. So would love to know
Mm.
kind of what you do on the real estate end as well.
Yeah, so for real estate, when I first started my real estate company, I became a realtor. That's the only way I knew how to do it.
Mhm.
And I didn't mention earlier, but when I got laid off, I went from this, 6K guaranteed salary to $8,000 a month job to nothing. And when I was working with my friend of mine who's an investor, I was making like $15 a day.
Mhm.
And so I went from making a lot to making like next to nothing.
Mhm.
But I needed to do whatever I had to do at that time to take care of my family. And $15 a day was better than nothing.
Yep.
So while I was working with him on his houses, I'm learning how to invest, and I get my realtor's license because he was a realtor as well. But the brokers that I was with wouldn't didn't really want me to work with him because he was considered retired. So he wasn't working as hard and pushing as hard as most other people. So because of that, I just kind of went to YouTube and I started learning how to invest and buy properties and flip properties. So I ended up getting into wholesaling. Are you familiar? Which a lot of people not familiar with wholesaling,
Yep.
but
Wholesaling.
so say it
Sorry,
again. I'm
Jeff.
sorry.
No, I was gonna just ask. So it's wholesaling from. I'm not a real estate genius, but it's basically kind of buying a bunch of properties and then like from that, renting them out or kind of selling them one by one.
Oh
But
no, no,
wondering.
no. Wholesaling is different. So let's say hypothetically you have a relative that has a house they want to sell. The house
Mhm.
is worth 150,000, but it's a little outdated. They don't have the money to fix it up, or they just don't want to fix it up, and they want to buy a different house. So that $150,000 house, they want to sell it for 100,000. Well, I know someone who will pay 120,000 for that same house. So instead of
Okay.
them, I can go in and say, hey, if I can give you 100,000 for that house, would you be happy? They'll say yes, and I'll take the house, the details, what needs to be done to it, the projection of it. Like if we put $10,000 into this house, how much it would be worth, and I'll take that to another investor and say, hey, this house is for sale right now. You can buy from me for 120, and once it's fixed up, it'll be worth 180, and they'll pay that 120 for that house. So now that 120 they give to me, I pay for the house the 100,000, and I'll keep the profit in between.
Got it.
So yes, and really this works with everything. I used to do this with hotels and skyscrapers before COVID. I had this big skyscraper, the second biggest skyscraper in New Orleans, Louisiana. Anytime you see a movie, I had that deal on the contract for sale. And then when COVID happened, nobody's buying hotels, nobody's buying skyscrapers. So my profit on that deal was $3 million. But I still deal with the houses and the apartments as well. And we will wholesale like 1 to 3 apartment buildings per month in Louisiana. And then I moved out here, so we haven't been doing it as much because I'm really big on focusing on one business at a time. And being that I do own multiple businesses, I'm scaling one business at a time, and the real estate is my third in line. So we'll be back to it. I really want to get back to the hotels and the skyscrapers because that's where the money's at. But the houses and the houses and apartments, you can still make decent income with, and it's no cash, no credit out of your pocket. It's really 100% profit.
Got it. Interesting. So you're saying wholesaler, you mean kind of like flipping properties? That's what you meant.
Kind of like flipping contracts. You don't
Got
actually have to purchase the property. You don't need the cash. You don't need the credit. You just know someone who's looking to sell, and you know someone who's looking to buy it.
it.
It's the same thing that we do at Walmart and drop shipping. It's just using it in real estate.
Got it. Okay, interesting. Because when I heard wholesale, I thought of like whole Costco, like getting close to the
Yeah,
supplier.
yeah.
I was misinterpreting, but I appreciate you mentioning that. Just so quick follow into that. Say for example, when you're kind of wholesaling property, for example, do you
Mhm.
have to like say for example, if someone wants to sell it for 100, another person wants to buy it for 120, definitely understand that 20K profit margin. But for that period of time, do you have to kind of officially buy the house, or do you just have to tell the bank like, hey, this is the arrangement I have. Like I can give you guys some percent of the fee. Like, what does the financial arrangement look like behind the scenes there?
Well, it depends on your investors. So what I do is I build a big list of investors, and I really prefer people who pay cash. So
Got it.
if my guys are paying cash, then we can close a lot faster. If I find this property today, we can probably close on it before the end of the week. And we'll have that 20K profit in our pocket. Now the title company does all of the work. You can do what's called a double closing, where they'll take the cash from the second closing, which would be the investor buying the property, and they'll use it for the first closing. I know these terms are kind of foreign to a lot of people, but they'll use that cash from the second closing for the first. So that way, now if I don't bring any cash to the closing, they're going to use the cash that I'm getting the same day to pay that property off. So I'll own it for like 5 minutes, and then it'll transfer over to the end buyer or the investor. Now that's one way to do it, a double closing, and then the other way to do it would be an assignment fee. What I don't like about assignment fees is that I'll have a contract with my seller who's selling the property, and I also have a contract with my investor who's purchasing it from me. So what that means is that my seller, if they're selling it for 100,000 and my investor's paying 120, he can see exactly what they're paying me because they'll have both of the agreements. They'll say, "Oh, you're buying this house for 100, selling it to me for 120, so you're taking $20,000 profit." A lot of people don't like that. So they want to cut out the middleman. In that instance, I will be the middleman, and they don't want to pay the extra 20,000. They just want to go straight to the seller, which sometimes it doesn't matter. But some people, they will what I call pocket watch, and they will wonder, why am I paying you this much when I just went through the work to find them a good deal.
Steve,
But it's the same concept as Costco and Walmart. They're getting their stuff from somewhere at a different price. Let's say toothpaste, they're getting it for $3, and they'll sell it in the store for 5. It's just the same thing. It's just doing it real estate in bigger numbers.
yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up. I get, say for example, on the retail end, if you're trying to kind of lower the supply chain, cut out the middleman, because like that's innovation that I understand.
Mhm.
But I don't think what I think, in my opinion, everyone's biased toward their opinions, but in my opinion, kind of the thing they mentioned earlier, if someone's trying to cut you out of that deal, it almost looks like bad faith because at the end of the day, it's not like, for example, like it's some kind of innovation, like they met together, like without you, the deal wouldn't succeed. So if they,
Exactly.
so I don't think it's fair to cut you out of a deal that you put together. In my opinion, that just seems like bad faith. And I think if two people meet, coincidentally and are able to put a deal together, great. But if you're the person responsible for making that happen, like you're owed your margin, man. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not right to be like for like a seller to tell the buyer like, oh, like this is what your person's this is what the cut your person's getting. Let's cut him out. Like that doesn't seem right, man. I hope that doesn't.
Yeah.
I hope that happens.
And me personally, I'm not that type of person where there are companies out there where they'll just beat you over the head on your price, and you're like, "Hey, I have cancer. I need to sell this house so I can pay for my chemotherapy." And they're like, "I understand that, and I understand you need 100, but I can give you 60." And I'm like, some people are just kind of heartless with it. And me personally, I just like to help people. So, if your price works for you and it works for me, we can go with it. I'm okay with making $5,000, $10,000 on a deal. I don't have to, hurt you so that I can make money. I don't mind making a little, just as long as I can help you to get out your situation. That's the way I look at it. And then for the end buyer, it is kind of bad fate to me, because if it's a lot of work, it is a lot of work and a lot of legwork, which is not a lot of money or credit, but there's a lot of hard work to get these deals. So when I find a deal and I negotiate it and I bring it to you and it's a great deal, why shouldn't I get compensated for that? You know?
No, for sure. Preach out there to like everyone thinking of, or everyone who has the idea to cut someone out of a business or kind of take advantage of a business partner. Don't do it. It's unsustainable. Just do the right thing, and the money will take
Mhm.
care of itself. So I
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
agree with you on that end. But one point kind of to bring up earlier, just regarding the kind of real estate transaction you mentioned specifically from the investor perspective. So kind of when you're doing this wholesale or flipping, whatever way you like to call it, it's better to have investors who are like a little more understanding of the process of what's going on than say, for example, maybe taking out a loan, then had there being a risk of the deal falling apart to kind of spread
Yeah.
out, but to like share the upside.
Yeah, so a lot of times now different investors will be a little different about it. Let's say for me personally, if I'm investing my money and it's a line of credit, I'm not really as attached to it because it's not money that I actually work for. So I'm okay with making a smaller percentage off of it. Where if an investor is looking to purchase a property and they're going through the bank is going to tell you what they'll actually pay for that property. So sometimes it depends on the bank. Um, and then there's certain stipulations, there's a lot of different things when the bank is involved. And it also takes forever to close. It takes 30, 45 days sometimes to close those deals versus, but there's a lot of people who are just getting into investing who don't mind making a little bit of money and they'll pay more for that property because they're just getting in. They're okay with making less. They just want to get their feet wet, and a bank is the best way for them to get started. So I don't mind working with those people as well because everyone needs to start somewhere, and it's not. I feel as if it's not right to not give people a chance. So I work with them as well. They'll probably pay a little more than a seasoned investor who's looking to make guaranteed $50,000 or whatever his number is per property, where this brand new person might be okay with making 25. If that makes sense.
No, for sure. I definitely kind of agree with what you're saying. So it really depends the kind of deal you're doing, not the kind of investors you work with, but ideally it's people who understand the timeline and won't be, pardon my French, won't be a pain in the ass when it comes time to close and kind of do
Hundred
business. That's
percent.
okay. Awesome. Sounds good. Appreciate the insight and the real estate conversation on that.
Yeah, yeah.
Here are the last things to get into. Know you have this kind of credit advisory business and also this real estate business and maybe a few others. What are some challenges that you face day to day in these things and kind of how are you able to get around them?
So for me, I've been in the oil field. I was in the oil field and working other businesses for a long time, and unfortunately, all of those businesses were jobs and positions where if they called me up and say, "Hey, you have to go out of town for a week," I had to go. And then the bad thing about that is that a week might turn into 2 weeks, where my wife and the kids think I'm coming home in a week. Now I have to stay another week longer. So now because of that, I'm very intentional about spending time with the family. I pretty much work from home. My teams, they work virtual, they work from home. I really like to spend time with the family as much as I can. So that's been the biggest challenge for me. Networking is very important in business, but I can't go and network if I spend time with the family. Another issue, which is not really an issue, is this that we just had a baby a couple of years ago, but now my
Obviously,
wife's pregnant again. Yeah, and we're having another baby. So in November this year. So that's also big too. And I like to stay home, make sure I can, take care of the wife and everything. But that's probably the biggest struggle for me, just spending time with the family, but also being super successful. Because there's a lot of people I talk to where they're always on the plane. Is they're always in a different state. They're never home. And if I can't bring my family with me, it's just not that important to me. I can still make a ton of money and do a lot of things working from home or working around the family because we'll go places and I can still work. I can pretty much work anywhere in the United States or anywhere in the world because everything I do is pretty much virtual. So we can go to vacation and I can be on the beach and still work and make money. But um, if my family can't come with me, then it's a big thing for me.
okay, so that comes down
Um,
to what you value, and maybe kind of working and also kind of trying to balance the family time is a challenge. But it sounds like that's just one of the things you figure out over time, and ultimately, if you value kind of time spent with your family above all else, that's just kind of what it is, right?
Correct, correct. And my only other issue would have been um, was funding at first. I couldn't get the money I needed because a lot of people, 8 out of 10 businesses go out of business because they don't have the capital they need to continue to grow. They can't sell enough products or enough services to make the money that they need to sustain the business. So that was big for me at first too. I didn't have that capital. I didn't have the network. I didn't have the credit in order to successfully grow these businesses. And then I had one business that failed because and also this was a big thing for me too. It was spending my time focused on too many different things at once, too many different businesses at one time, and not really focusing on each business individually. So we only have 100% of attention. Now, if I have 10 businesses and I'm spending time on all of them, 10% of my attention is on all those businesses. And if I veer off and focus more on one, the others will suffer. So, focus on too many things at one time, building too many businesses at once, not really 100% focused on one at a time, and not having a strong enough infrastructure or team in order to properly, sustain those businesses if I was to focus on anything else. Those were my struggles at first.
So over time, I know it's definitely tough, and especially for a lot of people starting out, kind of doing their own thing or running their own business. They want to dedicate 1,000%, and then they get another idea and want to dedicate another 1,000% or another 100%. But
Mhm.
we don't have 200%. We have like 100% capacity. So maybe trying to get something working really hard to get one thing right, and then when that thing's kind of operational, slowly starting something else. So not trying to
Correct.
work yourself out of business in a way, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. And just two other things to get into. You're running these kind of businesses. Where do you see them going in the next 10 years? Do you see that yourself selling them at some point or just kind of keep growing, or right now just kind of whatever happens, happens?
So right now, I believe that funding itself is going to change. So I believe that the way that I help people to get the funding for their businesses, I think is going to change.
Mhm.
The way banking systems are collapsing, banks are going out of business. I feel as if that's going to change. But as far as the real estate, the passive income opportunities like trucking, e-commerce, things like that, real estate. I think those things are going to continue to grow, and I don't plan on selling those businesses. I plan on just growing them, scaling them, and then passing them down to the children for them to continue to grow and scale. Because we're going to start a fund where we help people to invest in commercial apartments. I'm getting them the money to do it. Now I can give them the vehicle to put their capital in, the real estate that they can physically go and touch and see and be on the property. And I just think that we're just going to continue to grow them. I don't plan on selling them in the future. Maybe the credit company, but I don't plan on selling them.
I like the idea too, yeah, because where we see what's happening with banks and behind the scenes, we don't really know how they're managing their balance sheets, and then you see what happens. So maybe the credit company would be something to maybe consider selling in the future. But I agree with you in the real estate sense. It's probably the most tangible of assets you could have, and kind of holding that and growing that
Mhm.
at a time, passing it on. I think it's a beautiful thing. So really great and insightful conversation around that. And just to wrap up here, the last few things you might have alluded to it earlier, but kind of when you're not running these businesses or kind of putting deals together or helping folks get funding, kind of what do you do in your life to bring you happiness?
Ooh, man. Yeah, spending time with the family. I really like to make money. I feel as if God gave everybody a certain amount of potential, and I
Mhm.
want to max out my potential on earth. I don't know what everybody believes in, but I feel like I have a ton of potential, and I want to max it out. So that means that, being as successful as I can be. I feel as if it's everyone's duty to be successful because we also should help as many people as we can. But we can't help people if we can't help ourselves. We can't help people if we don't have any money. So I feel as if we should all strive to make a ton of money in order to help more people. That's how I feel. So it makes it, I have fun by making money. I like to go to the beach with the family. I like fishing. I'm from Louisiana, so I don't know, it's probably just it's probably just came to me because of that. But fishing, boxing, kickboxing, I like physical, sports like that too. And, making money, spending time with the family. I like to. This is my favorite, really. That's all
Got
I do. I'm pretty boring, man. I eat, I eat, spend time with the family. That's it, and work.
Yeah, man, that's the way it is. I think a lot of people, making money is great and all, but I think two things that I really agree with you there is like, you wanna make a lot of money so you can, provide for yourself, but also help other people. I think, having
Mhm.
something that's good with it is also a way to keep it sustainable. But that being said, I think at the end when, we're all in our unfortunately, but when we're all in our deathbeds, we're kind of looking back. I think it's more how much time do we spend with the people we loved, and I think that's ultimately kind of what's important. So definitely agree with you on that point, my man. Last thing I wanted to ask really quickly, is there anything else that you want to share with people? Anything else that you think people should know? Life advice, career advice, relationship advice? Richard, floor is yours.
Oh well, like you mentioned, when you're on your deathbed, there's a lot of things that's gonna come to your mind, and I think one of them is not gonna be how much money did I make or how many people know how successful I was. It's gonna be how many people did I help, how much time did I spend with the family, you know, um, things like that. And I feel as if we should all strive to be more um, present in our kids' lives and with our wives and husbands. Our marriages and commitments that we committed to. I feel as if we should all strive to be more intentional about those relationships, as well as you know, like I said with the kids, being very, very present with them, because the kids nowadays are growing up, and a lot of kids are just on YouTube, they're on tablets and stuff like that. Which I'm not saying that stuff is bad, but they don't have a lot of guidance. This is what I'm seeing in the communities around me, is that a lot of kids don't have the guidance. Families don't get together like they used to. Kids are not outside playing football together and basketball like they used to when we were younger, playing tag and hide and seek and things like that. A lot of times the children are just, in the house on the games, on the tablets. And if we don't properly manage them, or not manage, but train them and teach them, they are the future. So it sounds cliche, children are the future. But if we don't properly take care of them, our future is not going to be as good as it could be. And one thing is a joke that I tell the kids all the time. I'm like, back in the day, people were a lot tougher than they were now. There was 12-year-olds working full-time jobs
That's
before, generation before me. But now, it's hard to get a child out of the house sometimes just to go and, make friends. Um, so that, I mean, I know it's not that big of a deal to a lot of people, but I just feel like we should really be more connected and be more human, um, and get off of social media so much,
I
if
agree.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point. And I think it's a personal struggle for me because I think a lot of my business or a lot of Nico and the podcast revolves around media, but my goal is to really share the real side of people and not just, share that everything is like 100% dandy all the time. So really appreciate you bringing up these points. I think that's great advice to spend time with the family, focus on definitely spending time with your kids and help them develop and, because, they're the future. But overall, Rich, you've got an incredible life journey. You're doing some awesome things with businesses. You're showing that if stuff hits the fan early in your life, it's possible to come back. Some really, really, really great points and credit tips and real estate tips to bring up. So overall, Richard, thank you so much for taking the time to go on the Business is Booming podcast.
No, I appreciate you for being here, man.